It's a small flame in your heart. Every one of you has it. It burns steadily. Nothing can put it out. It's the voice within, your intuition. If you listen closely, it knows everything you need to know. When you add in your intuition, the flame grows. Your life becomes magical. Let's turn it on now. Intuition Ignition with your host, Kristen White.
Hi, everyone. It's Kristen, and you're listening to Intuition Ignition. You know, do you ever wonder how you're going to connect to that perfect person in your life? I mean, maybe you already have the love of your life, and you are in this wonderful bliss. But for those of you who are listening, and you want to know, is that special person ever coming? Or how can I tell with my intuition that this person is exactly the right person for me? Well, you're going to love my guest today. She is the expert on this topic, Arielle Ford. She's been in this for quite some time, 25 years, living and promoting consciousness. And she's the author of the international bestseller, The Soulmate Secret, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction. Now, she also has a latest book, Wabi-Sabi Love, The Ancient Art of Finding Perfect Love in Imperfect Relationships. So, Arielle, thanks for being with me here today.
Oh, you're so welcome. How are you?
I am amazing. And I have to give a disclaimer up front because I have used your Dear God love letter, and that's how I found the love of my life. And you and I were talking about this when we were together in person a couple months ago. So I know that what we're about to talk about today, I'm super excited about because it works.
Yeah, that's what's really so great about this work is it does work. And the only thing that stops the law of attraction from working is your negative beliefs, the belief that you're too old, you're too fat, you're too damaged, all the good ones are taken, and therefore you can't have great love in your life. That's what gets in your way, because otherwise it's perfectly available. And I just saw this great movie called The Theory of Everything. It's about the life of the physicist Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
You know, for those of you who don't know who Stephen Hawking is, he's this genius guy, one of the smartest men alive on the planet, who is a total quadriplegic. He lives in an electric wheelchair. He can only speak through a computer. And he's managed, in spite of all of this, to have two great loves in his life. So he is living proof that there's nothing stopping any of us from having great love.
You know, I remember when I was married previously, and I was getting ready to go through that process of getting a divorce. And, you know, there was, I don't know if you ever heard this saying, that if you're over 40, you're more plus to die in a plane crash than to find a man.
No, Newsweek magazine 20 plus years ago said a single woman over 40 had a better chance of being killed by a terrorist than getting married.
Yeah. So, I mean, I heard these kinds of statistics and I thought, gosh, that just sounds just miserable. You know, and I had 3 children at the time. So, you know, I'm a package deal. It wasn't going to just be me. And I thought, you know what? I got to just get my energy moving in the right direction. You know, I'm also a student of the law of attraction and meditation and consciousness. And I thought, well, I'm going to go on 40 dates in 40 days.
And good for you. That's a bold thing to do.
I did, and I went out with all different kinds of people because I thought, you know, I don't know who I want now. I don't know. I mean, I was married to one person. It didn't work. So I went out with people of different ages, people of different races. You know, we did all kinds of stuff. And it was really valuable for me. Actually, one of the first people I met ended up being my husband, and it always kind of works out that way. It's like the first wedding dress you try on. But I think that it was funny because I wasn't just meeting people through dating sites. I was meeting them everywhere. I mean, at the grocery store, I go out to dinner because my energy was in that direction.
Exactly. Well, that was really brilliant of you. Bravo.
Well, I think I also read your book, so I was like, okay, I got to get myself out there. So, you know, they call you the Cupid of Consciousness. I love all these names, and the Fairy Godmother of Love. So let's talk about some of the tools for someone who's out there who needs to really get out there.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things you need to do right away. And the first one is forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself for all the things you think you've done wrong or have been doing wrong, and you're blaming yourself for being single. because that's just not useful energy to have. So you got to forgive yourself. And then you've got to forgive anybody from your past that you're still judging as having done you wrong, because you don't want to drag that into your future. So forgiveness is a really difficult piece, but really, really important. Now, once you do that step, the next thing to do is to get to absolute clarity about how you want to feel when you're with your soulmate. So many people have this list in their head. Oh, he's got to be 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, certain kind of job. They have all these requirements. But that's not necessarily going to make you happy. So you have to ask your own soul, what do I most desire for my long-term happiness? And get really clear about the heart traits and qualities your soulmate needs to possess. And then create a soulmate wish list based on that. So those are the really most important things to do. And they require effort. You don't just sit down like it's a shopping list. Oh, I need eggs, bread, and cheese.
Right.
So when I was doing this process, I realized that the most important quality my soulmate needed to possess was generosity. Not so much with his wallet, but more with his time and affection and attention. Because I saw that what my soul was calling for was I wanted to be the center of somebody's universe. And yet my history was I kept going after these captain of the universe types, which are so involved with themselves and narcissistic and self-centered, and they had no time to give to me. And that's what I most needed. And fortunately, I was able to manifest somebody 18 years ago who was a recovering captain of the universe, who is the most loving, giving, generous human being on the planet. And I just couldn't be happier.
Yeah, I know in your story, it really gives people hope that have been single for a while. So you brought your soulmate into your life at age 44.
Yeah. And my mother-in-law did it at age 80.
Wow.
So age has nothing to do with it. What size you wear, how much money you have or you don't have, none of that's important. What's important is that you realize just like there's enough air for you to breathe, enough clean water for you to drink, there's more than enough love in the world for you to have. And I have nothing but proof of this. So if you're running around thinking, okay, when I lose 10 or 20 pounds, then I'll be ready to date, you're never going to start dating,
I'm sure that's a common one that stops us.
Oh, and what's really funny? I want you to guess what the average size of a wedding dress is sold in the United States.
Size 12?
No, size 16.
Wow. They
So
run small.
Brides that are not a 2, a 4, or a 6.
Yeah, no.
It has nothing to do with size.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Intuition Ignition, and my guest today is Arielle Ford, the author of The Soulmate Secret and Wabi-Sabi Love. We'll be right back in just a second.
You are listening to Intuition Ignition with Kristen White. To learn more about Kristen White, you can visit her website at kristenwhite.net. Who is driving your life? Kids, husband, career. Maybe it's time to hand over the keys to your higher self. This is the best place to start a conversation with your intuition. Grab a copy of Kristen White's #1 international best-selling book, Mystic in a Minivan, at intuitionpodcast.com. While you're there, get your free copy of 10 tips to ignite your intuition immediately. Again, that's intuitionpodcast.com. Thank you for listening to Intuition Ignition. Your intuition is just waiting to ignite. The first easy step is to subscribe to this podcast to receive new inspiration from our thought-provoking guests every couple of days. Visit intuitionpodcast.com to subscribe now. Again, that's intuitionpodcast.com.
Hi, Arielle. We're back now, and we were just talking before the break about making that wish list. But let's talk about that list. Should you include on that list what I might consider non-negotiable points, like I don't want someone who uses alcohol or drugs? I mean, what's the role of that?
Yes, and the way that you phrase that, because you never say I don't want. Everything on your list has to be stated as a positive affirmative statement. So on my list I had, my soulmate leads a healthy lifestyle. So which for me, it's very clear in my mind that healthy means no smoking, no drugs, no addictions. So, you have to set it up that way. I also had things that you might forget about, like it's really important that if you're a cat lover like me, that you manifest a cat lover, because I had been dating a guy who was allergic to cats.
That doesn't
work. Deal breaker. There's nothing an allergic person can do.
Right.
So, one of the things on my list, my soulmate must be a cat lover. I had other crazy things. I like to go for long walks every day. So one of the things on my list is my soulmate loves to take walks and can walk unassisted.
Yeah, that's important. What about if you're in a relationship with someone right now who you just know is not the right person for you, but maybe you don't let it go because you think that they're going to get better or they're going to change or that there's some type of magic that might happen?
Yeah, that's called magical thinking. It's actually a diagnosable mental illness.
I love it.
And it's guaranteed to not get you where you want to go. So you have to really ask yourself, do I have a true and honest commitment to being with my soulmate? And if the answer is yes, then any amount of time that you spend with somebody that you know is not your soulmate is just a block to your dreams. So you're better off being alone than being with a compromise.
I think that is just a profound statement, but there is a pretty common fear of being alone, or I'm not going to find someone else. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I call that being addicted to suffering.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are addicted to suffering. They're addicted to their story that I'm a victim. Oh, I just never get what I want. Oh, there's nobody out there for me. Or I'm just not lucky enough. Poor me. Therefore, I'm just going to make do. I'm going to eat the burnt toast, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you get to choose that. People just refuse to embrace how powerful they really are. So if you don't like what you got and you're not willing to love what you got, then the next thing to do is to realize you have the power to change all of that. But it requires being an emotionally mature adult.
Yeah, and I think
stop whining and complaining.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that a lot of women and some men like to take on a project. It's like, oh, I can fix this, or I can work on that, or someday this will work out. And that being in that role really never does bring the rewards that you hope for or envision.
Well, I think we all know by now that for the most part, people don't really change all that much. And men are particularly good at letting you know who they are early on.
Right.
They generally don't lie. If they tell you right off the bat, I don't think I want to have kids, you're not going to change their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're sure you want to have kids, this is not the guy for you. He may be perfect in every respect, but if you've known your entire life you want to be a mom, and this guy's telling you early on, I don't really like kids, why would you go out on another date?
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take another break, but boy, sage advice from one of the experts, really the expert out there on relationships, Arielle Ford, the author of The Soulmate Secret, Manifest the Love of Your Life with the Law of Attraction, and her latest book. I want to talk about that when we come back. Wabi-Sabi Love, the ancient art of finding perfect love in imperfect relationships. And none of us have any of those, right? So we'll be right back.
You are listening to Intuition Ignition with Kristen White. To learn more about Kristen White, you can visit her website at KristenWhite.net. Thank you for listening to Intuition Ignition. Your intuition is just waiting to ignite. The first easy step is to subscribe to this podcast to receive new inspiration from our thought-provoking guests every couple of days. Visit intuitionpodcast.com to subscribe now. Again, that's intuitionpodcast.com. Who is driving your life? Kids, husband, career. Maybe it's time to hand over the keys to your higher self.
This is the best place to start a conversation with your intuition. Grab a copy of Kristen White's #1 international best-selling book, Mystic in a Minivan, at intuitionpodcast.com. While you're there, get your free copy of 10 tips to ignite your intuition immediately. Again, that's intuitionpodcast.com.
All right, you're listening to Intuition Ignition, and I'm your host, Kristen White, and we've been talking a lot on this show about finding love. But what if you're in a marriage and you feel like you've lost your love? What do you do then, Arielle?
Oh, well, that's kind of a very long conversation. But what generally happens is that resentments build up after a long time. Things get unexpressed. And sometimes you have to go back and retell the story of your meeting and relive the experiences of when you first got together, and to remember what was great about your partner and what you fell in love with. And, probably even go to counseling. I mean, God invented therapists and coaches for a reason. This stuff really works. And you got to clear out the crap. That's what happens. Everybody's got all these unmet needs. And the thing to really understand is that there's no such thing as perfection. In fact, I believe the word perfection needs to be changed to pure fiction.
Yeah, I like that.
Right? Yeah, because we're all imperfect beings. But what's true is that we all wake up in the morning wanting to be loved for exactly who we are, warts and all. So when we start to accept the fact that we're imperfect and our mate is imperfect, but it doesn't mean we can't love them in spite of it, we can have what I call a Wabi-Sabi love shift in perception. So I want to tell you just a very quick story that really explains what Wabi-Sabi love is.
Yeah, please do.
I have these friends, Jerry and Diane, and Jerry has an addiction. Jerry is addicted to poppy seed bagels. And every single morning he gets up, he goes in the kitchen, he slices one of his bagels to put in the toaster, and as he's slicing the bagel, hundreds of little black poppy seeds scatter all over Diane's white tile floor. Then a little while later, Diane gets up and she goes in the kitchen, and the first thing she does every day, and she's been doing this for 30 years, is she gets on her hands and knees with a wet paper towel and she wipes up the little black poppy seeds. Now, generally, this isn't a problem for her, but one morning she was in a really grumpy mood, and while she was wiping up the poppy seeds, she thought to herself, I wonder what would have to happen for me to never do this again. And this was followed by the thought, oh, that would mean Jerry's no longer with me. And she started to cry, and she got off the floor, and she went to the other room to find him and gave him a big kiss. And from that morning forward, every time she wiped up the little black poppy seeds, her heart would be filled with love because the seeds now meant she had another day to spend with Jerry.
I love that story because that is just about how our perspective really shifts our life. I mean, you're right. You could look at it so many different ways, but what a loving way to look at what could be really annoying in a relationship.
Yeah, I call this going from annoyed to enjoyed. So you find the thing that your mate does, maybe they do it every day, and it drives you crazy. And the first thing you have to realize that it's not their problem, it's your problem. You're the one who's judging this behavior is bad or wrong, whether it's not taking the trash out or leaving the wet towels on the floor or squeezing the toothpaste from the middle, whatever it is, they're just doing what they do. They may have a blind spot about this, but you're the one who's going crazy over it. And what you need to do is make up a new, empowering, fun story about it so that you can shift your reaction to it. Because chances are, if they haven't changed it in 20 years, they probably won't. I'll tell you another quick story about this. I was teaching Wabi-Sabi Love at a conference a few months ago, and I put everybody in the room into groups of 3, and the assignment was to share the thing that your mate does that makes you the craziest, and then to have your group figure out a solution. So this woman tells a story about how her husband works out of town 2 weeks every month. And when he's out of town, the house is pristine and spotless and organized, and it's her house. And then he comes home for 2 weeks, and the place turns into chaos, and it's a mess, and she goes crazy. And so one of her group members said to her, do you have a dog? And she said, yes. And she said, does your dog shed? Yes, the dog sheds. What do you do when the dog sheds? I get out the vacuum cleaner. Do you still love your dog? Well, yes, of course I love my dog. And then the light bulb went off, and she said, oh, Donald sheds.
I love it. That's great. You know, I remember when I was going through my divorce, and we decided to seek out counseling. And I was sitting there with the counselor, and the counselor said something that was really profound. He says, you know, I see couples all the time, and sometimes I'll see the same person, and they're married to a new person. And I'll see that same person maybe a couple years later, and it might be another new person. And what he said is, suddenly the light bulb goes off that the common denominator here in all of this is them.
Right.
And that, you know, I think that what this whole interview is about our own responsibility for our own thoughts and actions and perceptions and beliefs, and that what we bring to a relationship, and that, you know, at the end, we're going to keep having that same relationship over and over and over again. It'll just look different. You know, they'll have brown hair or blonde hair, or be taller or thicker, because if we don't change, it's almost like we run the program.
You just nailed it. That's exactly what it is.
So to help
personal responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to tell everyone who's listening as we wrap this up that you offer a course. It's a 7-week Soulmate Secret course where you can work on yourself. So how can they find out about that, Arielle?
It's called, just go to the website soulmatepassion.com, soulmatepassion.com, and that has all the information about my 7-week Soulmate Secret online course. And also, if you're interested in Wabi-Sabi Love, I have kind of a long URL, but I have a free 5-part video series. It's at wabisabilove.com/gifts. And there's a 5-part video series there.
Perfect. And if you want to find out more about this too, you can visit my podcast page, and I'll have links for all of this as well. So, Arielle, thank you so much for your time today. Incredible stuff. Really insightful.
Thank you. It was really fun talking with you.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, everybody. You've been listening to Intuition Ignition, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Intuition Ignition. Your intuition is just waiting to ignite. The first easy step is to subscribe to this podcast to receive new inspiration from our thought-provoking guests every couple of days. Visit intuitionpodcast.com to subscribe now. Again, that's intuitionpodcast.com.